Now this is without a doubt the most asked question that I get. Should I buy Bitcoin? I'm going to save that video of my opinion on Bitcoin for another video. I'm going to put it on the YouTube channel, but for now I'm just going to explain to you what it is, because I know so many people who have bought Bitcoin but have absolutely no idea what it is. Okay, so first and foremost, the thing that you need to know about Bitcoin is it's not like, for example, a stock or a bond where it produces a dividend or a coupon. You don't get a return on investment for it unless someone's willing to pay a better price for it. Okay, so that in and of itself means that to invest in Bitcoin doesn't really exist, because what are you investing in? You're not. What you're doing is you're speculating that the price will increase. Okay, so just get that that's not even a biased opinion, really. That is just straight fact. It's not really an investment. It's a speculation. The same way you might speculate that a football team will win. Okay, and that doesn't mean I'm necessarily saying don't do it, but just understand the difference. You know, and if you can't grasp that initially, just go back to the sort of the stock video, go to the bond video, and look at the way they produce something, whether it's a dividend off a stock, a coupon from a bond, an interest rate on a currency pair. Okay, so what is Bitcoin? Okay, this is the next most important thing after you sort of understand it's not an investment, it's a speculation. The second most important thing about Bitcoin is to just sort of understand exactly what's going on. And I'm going to try and simplify this as much as I physically can. Okay, so the best way I think to think about Bitcoin is to imagine this huge list of transactions. Okay, imagine every single time you went into a bank and you deposited money, it was like, I don't know, for example, Adam, £50. Let's actually make this a lot bigger. Okay, let's make this huge. Listen, we can just let this go on forever. So, Adam gives 50 to Lucy. Lucy gives 25 to Jane, and so on. Okay, and this way you can sort of keep track of who's holding what store of value, right? And effectively what Bitcoin is this huge ledger, right? And it's distributed across a network of people who can see all these transactions, okay? It's completely what we call decentralized. This is probably quite a key word for you to understand if you're interested in Bitcoin. It's decentralized, okay? And what we mean by that is there's not a single central bank controlling this or monitoring these transactions. It's a huge network, so it's actually a distributed, okay, right? And these transactions, or this list of transactions, is what we call a ledger. So you'll often hear people say Bitcoin is a distributed ledger, right? And effectively all that means is there's all these transactions taking place. So it's like effectively like a long list of receipts, okay? And it's completely decentralized, so it's just across a network. So people like you and I can go and look at these transactions, and we can be responsible for it effectively. It's not just giving the power to one certain person. And if you read, like, I'd highly recommend, if you have the time or the capacity to read the white paper by Satoshi Nakamoto. And he's the guy who basically created Bitcoin, and he talks all about the reasons why he did it, and this will, if you can, give it a go. Anyway, so that's what this is. So effectively, this is what Bitcoin is, right? It's a huge distributed ledger of receipts and transactions. Now, why is it so clever? The reason it's so clever is because it combines this with something called cryptography. Okay, so effectively what cryptography is it's taking one word and changing it to something completely different. So let's say, for example, if we take John, and we could do something like we take whichever number this letter appears, whichever, you know, where they appear in the alphabet, we times that number by 6 and we divide it by 4 and then times it by 2, whatever you want, just some random equation, and we end up with a number for J, and that could be 62, and we do the same for O, and it could be 43 and so on, and we end up with this huge digit, right? And it can be as long as you like, depending on how well the cryptography is done. And from there, what a lot of hackers try to do is they try to back solve it and work out what this originally meant. And obviously the more complex it is, the more difficult it is, right? And with Bitcoin, the idea is that it's so secure that you can't hack into it, and you can't, you know, hack into these and cheat the system. And the people who are there to make sure people don't cheat the system are people called miners. Okay, so far we've covered distributed ledger, decentralized, cryptography. Now another really important thing is miners. Okay, and what these miners do is effectively they take these huge numbers and they make sure that they contain a piece of code from the previous transaction. So part of this number, so let's say for example, just for simplicity, here it says 233. 233, if John is spending this, then he had to have received a sum of money which contained 233. Okay, that's it. I'm simplifying this massively, but that's effectively how this works. And these miners will go through this and they'll basically say, okay, this one is correct transaction. Then they might find another number here and they say this one's incorrect. And basically there has to be consensus across the network to make sure that the transaction is correct and it's not illegitimate. And that's the idea of a distributed ledger and a decentralized network, is that everyone has a part to play, and all these miners do this. Now why do these miners do this is the next important question. The reason these miners do it is because they're incentivized, because they receive bitcoins for every time that they do this. And what this process is actually called is called hashing. Okay, and every time they hash one of these codes, they're effectively getting closer to being rewarded with a Bitcoin, right? And I don't know the exact number, like how many hashes per Bitcoin. There you go. So Jesus, look at that number. So you've got to do 2.7 quadrillion hashes to generate a BTC, to generate a Bitcoin. So that's how they're incentivized. Obviously they don't do it manually, it's run by algorithms that they can create. And in effect they're rewarded Bitcoins. The probably next thing to take into account with Bitcoin is that, you know, there's a finite number, which is great because, for example, you get things like quantitative easing, or when I spoke about, you know, selling a lot of a currency, which means that in effect Bitcoin is protected from those sorts of things. So there are definitely arguments for why it's a great currency and why it potentially has a future. Whether or not I believe it is the future, I'll say for another video, but for this purposes of this is really just to give you an overview of what all these assets are.